Hey guys, it's Psychotic here with another video. Today I'm joined by my friend Kazamori. He's a champion on the ladder as well as a good friend of mine, good at RTA. We're going to be talking about champion roles and drafts and how champions fit into those roles. Um, Kazamori, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks for inviting me to your channel. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think that these bite-sized lessons will be a really great way to kind of help people who are relatively new to RTA or just want a refresher. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, so let's just go ahead and get into our first role in the draft here. Is going to be neutral champions. These are champions that they don't commit you to a style, and they fit in most comps. You got your Falconer, or Clary, your A Ross, Lilius is another good one, Fallen CC, and these are just good solid units that you can pick into anything, and they're not gonna commit you to cleave or to control or whatever. Um,
Yeah, and I think that the most important thing you brought up there was that it doesn't commit you to something. And I really hope that everyone watching this video who's relatively new to RTA, um, please just for a while try just picking your for your first two characters every single RTA draft. Try picking a neutral character like Falconer Clear, like Ross, which everyone has access to. Um, Pick very neutral units, and that way, it'll free up the rest of your draft to react or proactively do something.
yeah, another thing to note, like a lot of these are champions that you'll see a lot of legend and champion players. They'll almost always first pick one of these four if they're available. And a lot of them are also on the pre-ban as well, especially Falcon or Clary. So, all right, we're going to move into the next category of champions here. It's going to be counter champions. Um, Counter champions are used to counter specific champions or strategies. So these are your champions who you're going to pick to counter your RVs. So they're going to counter speed is another way you can counter or to counter debuffs. So some examples: you got ML Haste, ML Leluca is great. Those are good RV counters. You got Champ Zerato, really good at handling debuffs. Um, so those are some good examples. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, and one of the biggest things about counter is you want to combine that with the neutral picks that we were just talking about. Like if you're and this is the power of the neutral pick. You pick the neutral characters, and then that allows your opponent to mess up and to pick something, or that or mess up, or at least reveal their hand, and allows you to then pick units that are very good against what they have, instead of the other way around of them picking units good against what you have.
Yeah,
And you got characters also like the Politis that just came out, or Celine, which Celine is the definition of a counter pick. She's kind of like one of those characters that is only good whenever it's specifically countering something. And I think that um, these counter picks are great to do as soon as your opponent commits to any sort of strategy. If they're committing to cleave, you can pick things that are against cleave. If they pick a character like Arby or like Rylet, and then you pick a character that counters that unit, that's great. And try to get the counter picks most of the time. Try to get your counter picks out right away as soon as your opponent does that commit.
yeah. And another type of counter that's not necessarily a specific champion counter, but you got your speed contest. It's another way you can counter. So if somebody picks a Faithless Litica or a Cerise, you can counter that with your own fast units in that sense. So like an Acid or an Acoli that's going to be your fastest character. Just try to contest that first turn. That's another type of counter that's not just an extinction counter or something like that. So next, we're going to go into the opposite of counter, which is going to be draft definers. These are your picks that pull your draft together and give it a direction. It's a good way to put it. Um, and they also force your opponent to react to what you just picked. So some good examples are going to be your Arby, your Rylet, Strong control units like the SAR, the new Fairy Tale Tenembria is another good one. That
aka Alice.
yes, as Kazamori likes to call her, Alice. And these are picks that they're gonna give you your draft direction. You're no longer just some units. Now you have a focus with your draft.
Yeah, and the real strength of a draft finder is that they always have a specific toolkit that makes them difficult to deal with. So that's kind of how you know that you have a draft finder, which you know your draft finders, you're not usually taking them to counter something that somebody else has. You're usually taking them, as you said, to control the direction of the draft. And with stuff like immortality, evasion, revive, um, skill
Heavy debuffs.
nullifier, heavy debuffs, like especially like characters like Dizzy, Alice.
Right.
You know, they're going to be forcing your opponent to react in a specific way, or forcing your opponent to ban that character that you picked. And you guys always have to remember, if your character got banned, it means it was a good pick, generally speaking.
Yeah, and you want to make sure you're not first picking these. These are champions you want to pick to the mid or late stages of the draft, um, and you don't want to pick them until you're ready to commit to that style or that comp, because you want to give your opponent the least amount of picks to counter what you're doing. So if you are picking it as your last two picks, they only have one or two picks left to counter that, which gives you the opportunity to then ban out what they pick to counter you, or they might not have enough answers so that they can't pick around it.
Yeah, I think so. One other thing that we should probably point out about that is oftentimes you'll see either like legend RTA players and some of the tournaments like Shogun's tournament and stuff. You'll see you'll see them pick draft definers sometimes in the very beginning of the draft. I would try to stray away from that. That is a very high level thing to do because there's a lot of risk involved, and it often has to do with knowing what your opponent has in their arsenal. And when you're just on the ladder, you don't know what your opponent has usually,
Unless you're top legend.
Yeah, so I highly recommend that you follow the advice of doing those draft finders with mid to late picks.
All right. Our next one is more of a fun one, less common, but it's going to be pocket picks, and these are champions that you build in a surprising way or a different way than they normally are to catch your opponent off guard. So some examples we've seen before, either in tournaments or on the ladder. Personally, you got your counterattack Sermia, um, and you got your counterattack SSB. Those are some common ones. I know Kazamori just told me he ran into a Tank Broman. Like, nobody builds that, but this guy did, and it catches you off guard. So, these are ones you can pick these whenever you feel comfortable in the draft because they're designed to catch them off guard, to mislead them. So,
yeah, and that's the beauty of it. You can pick the characters so early in your draft that, and then your opponent might react in a certain way, and just you'll catch them completely off guard. And by far, the best part about pocket picks is it's just so fun. I mean, you get to just do crazy things, use your imagination. You think of a character, and you just anytime you think of a character, think, how would I expect my opponent to build this character? And if you build that character in a completely different way from how people expect it, you'll often just be able to take games for doing that and have fun doing it. So it's really great.
right. Especially if you can make it work. That's the hardest part with pocket picks, is making sure that
Yeah,
they actually
you need to have the gear
work.
too.
Yeah.
To do whatever it is you're trying to do.
Right. So, moving on, we got the last category. This is going to be your standard picks. These are more all-around DPS characters that you want to pick after your neutral picks, but you want to pick before your draft definers because you don't want to commit yet. So, but you need to pick up a damage dealer. Some good examples of these would be like a Charles. Either of the Ravis are great here. Alencia, Merca's a good 3-star. They're just really solid. They fill in your draft, but they don't commit you to that style that you're trying to prolong as long as you can. to give your opponent the least amount of chance to counter it.
Yeah, restricting the amount of information the opponent has about what your game plan is always a really great thing. And a lot of the times, the one of the big reasons why you end up doing those standard picks is just like Psychotic said, where you don't want to commit yet, but you still need to at least take a step forward towards committing. And well, a lot of times the reason why you have to do that leads me to one of my honestly biggest pet peeves when I'm watching games, and sometimes even my own games. I make this mistake too. Is a lot of times you'll have a game plan in play, and you'll have a critical part of your team, whether it be revive, extinction, cleansing, or just having two damage dealers. You always want to pick the critical parts of your team in pairs. You always want to have two, because otherwise the enemy can just ban it, and all of a sudden you're missing a critical part of your team and your whole game plan falls apart. And when you're doing standard picks, you a lot of times you do your first few picks are often just not damage dealers, because usually damage dealers aren't very neutral. And since we want to be doing, if you remember what we talked about earlier, we want to be doing those neutral picks early. So you end up having a few neutral picks, and then you all of a sudden have to at least have two damage dealers. So a lot of times your fourth pick will be a standard damage dealer, because you need to have a second damage dealer, but you don't really want to put something out there that the opponent can just hard counter, and they'll know exactly what you're trying to do. So it's great to do those standard picks in that situation.
Right. And you don't always have to pick them in pairs. There are another way you can get around that is to have another pick that has a ban threat to it. So, like, if they don't have Extinction and you have Arby, that's a ban target, so that'll allow you to pick another draft definer that you want to build your strategy around. And
that's a really good point.
That ban bait, as I like to call it, is another way to protect it. If say you only have one healer, but you can throw out a ban bait that they're going to ban, and that'll protect your healer.
So you guys do need to keep in mind that if you are doing that ban bait strategy, make sure that whatever it is you're trying to use as ban bait is something that if they don't ban, will absolutely devastate them.
Right. That is a good point. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Hopefully this has been educational, help you guys climb up the ladder, give you some ideas. Leave a comment down below if this helped you, or if you have any questions or any topics you want discussed in another video. I'd be glad to bring Kazamori back on to have more discussions like this. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Unless Kazamori has anything else to add, I think that's going to be it for today.
Thanks for inviting me to the channel. Just one quick thing, guys. The only way you guys are going to get better is play games. So just queue up those ladder games. Let's do some RTA.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.